to the Cannons and Tomahawks podcast, presented by Belly Up Sports. All things hockey, all the time. And now, here are your hosts, two washed-up beer leaguers who have no idea what they're talking about, Zach Martin and Alex Nuttall.
What's going on, everybody? We are back with another special episode of Cannons and Tomahawks podcast presented by Belly Up Sports. As always, I'm Alex. Got my buddy Zach. And Zach, we got a special guest today, don't we?
Very special guest, and I'm really excited for this one. He was actually a part of a movie that was in part of our top 10 hockey movies countdown, which I did mention as one of my top 10. To get him on and the fact that he was actually part of the movie was just a perfect timing, and I'm really excited to talk to him. And Alex, who do we have on tonight as our special guest?
Absolutely. So we have the host from the new Belly Up Sports family. It is the Hockey Club podcast. He's a former professional hockey player with the WHL and ECHL. We have Cory Paterson. Cory, how are you, sir?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We really appreciate you coming on, having a talk with us a little bit, and get you out to our fans, and hopefully they all flock over to you and start listening to your stuff once you get up and running.
Yeah, let's hope. That's the game plan anyway, so thank you.
Absolutely. So, Cory, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background, where you played a little bit and what you've done in the hockey world?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, I grew up in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. Played, obviously, all of my minor hockey in Saskatchewan. Was fortunate enough to played one game for the Moose Jaw Warriors. I spent a couple years in Moose Jaw, part of their midget AAA organization, and then came back to my hometown, played another year of midget AAA for the Regina Pat Canadians, and we won the Air Canada Cup, which is a pretty interesting story in it of itself, a national championship. Then I went on and played a couple years for the Regina Pats in the Western Hockey League. And then a couple years of Canadian Collegiate University. And then took myself down to West Virginia. And I was one of the first members of the inaugural season. Back then, we were known as the Wheeling Thunderbirds in the East Coast Hockey League. They're now known as the Wheeling Nailers. There was an issue there between the Seattle Thunderbirds of the Western Hockey League. They didn't like that the Wheeling Thunderbirds had that name as well, so they were forced to change it to the Nailers a few years after I left. Mm-hmm. And then played 2.5 years there. I got traded, the movie Slapshot that we all love. I mean, I am the movie Slapshot. I got traded to Florida, to Tallahassee, Florida. Finished out the season down in Tallahassee, moved up in the front office and did marketing. I did our radio and TV broadcasts for years. And when I decided to get out of the game, this remained my home. So I'm still down here in Florida. So hockey has been very, very good to me. Didn't make it to the NHL, but hockey may not necessarily give you what you want, but sometimes it'll give you everything you need. And so I'm very fortunate that hockey's given me just an absolutely tremendous life. Saskatchewan, Florida, I think Florida wins most of the time.
Like, do you want palm trees or do you want like the Arctic tundra where it's just like you just see nothing but snow for days?
That's exactly right. So I do get a kick out of following my friends on Twitter, and they'll send me text messages. Like not too long ago, it was like minus 47 with the wind chill, and I was sitting here looking out my office window. It's like, whoa, I think I did okay. So
yeah, right. Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious. So I know you said you played in the W and stuff like that. So for those who don't really know, because there is a draft for the OHL, the QMJHL, and the W and stuff like that. Can you explain to those who don't really follow the Canadian hockey leagues very much, like what goes into like those leagues and those drafts, if you can?
So yeah. So, I was born in 1970. So when I was 15 or 14, actually, back then there wasn't a draft in the Western Hockey League. Teams came around and they scouted you. They had scouts all over the place. And back then it was the first team to protect you, to list you and put you on their protected list. You were part of that organization. So when I was 14, the Moose Jaw Warriors protected me. Now, it was years later they went into having the bantam draft, I think it is. I'm not even exactly sure what age it is, but so the Western Hockey League in Canada is huge, and I think the most equivalent of it in the United States would probably be comparable to NCAA football.
Right.
It's a huge league. It's a feeder league to the NHL. There are teams scattered all across Canada. You go to any, even mid-sized, sometimes smaller cities that have Canadian Hockey League teams like, Moose Jaw. I played in Moose Jaw, a city of 35,000 people. They had a Western Hockey League team there. So, any given night, there could be, 20 or 30 games going on around the country with anywhere from 4 to sometimes up to 12 to 15,000 people at any one of those games.
That's wild. That's awesome. Yeah. I always thought that was interesting because I know a lot of people are like, what goes into the CHL and stuff like that, and with all the teams, just the drafts and all that stuff too, because you don't really see a lot of that down here, in the States. It's just like you have the NHL entry level draft, and that's really about it. Yeah. So it's interesting how like they used to do the rights, and now there's the actual drafts. Like, yeah. So is the draft is just for the whatever kids in that region, or can you also draft kids in like, let's say this guy's like in Ontario, but we're in like Portland? I think it's where your place of residence is, where your league is. So there's the Western Hockey League, which is from Manitoba all the way over to British Columbia. Okay. And there are some teams in the States like Spokane, Tacoma, Tri-City, Seattle, Portland, the Portland Winterhawks. Yeah. And then, so if you live in Ontario, you can only be drafted into the Ontario Hockey League, Western Hockey League, if you live in that region. Okay. So the unique thing about playing in the Western Hockey League. So there's really, if you're a young kid these days, there's really two ways of pursuing your hockey career and trying to make it to the NHL. Number one is trying to play for a CHL team, like a Regina Pats or a Portland Winterhawks, somebody like that. And that's called Tier 1. Right. Tier 2 hockey is scattered all the way across the country as well. Now, if you play just one single game in the CHL for a Western Hockey League or an Ontario Hockey League team, a Tier 1 team, you are totally you're not allowed to get a college scholarship to the States, because what happens is that NHL kids that get drafted and who sign pro contracts, they come back and they'll play, as an 18 or a 19-year-old. So you're considered a professional athlete at that time. Right. Mm-hmm. However, so Tier 2 hockey, which is a step below the CHL, there are a lot of tremendous hockey players that will play Tier 2 because they then have hopes of going on and getting a college scholarship, and then, playing at least 2 or 3 years in college and then trying to make it to the NHL from there. So if you're a young guy and you're not as mature of a player as somebody like, hopefully we'll talk a little bit. I'll give you guys a tip on a young player. You need to watch a kid named Connor Bedard. If you're not a Connor Bedard type player, it's a really good option to go Tier 2 and then try to go and play some years of college hockey and mature a little bit, grow, put on some size and some weight, and then take a crack at the NHL from there. So there's a couple avenues for kids coming up these days. Okay. Yeah. No, that's really interesting because I didn't know how that usually worked with, especially with the tiers and like how it works. So if you play in one versus the other. So yeah, I didn't know that at all. So what was it like playing in the CHL back then with the Regina Pats, like before, the whole draft and all that stuff, and just getting picked up and just with like those like protection lists and stuff like that?
Well, so back then, we all talk about it now, especially you hear it from the old timers, how the game has changed. And, back in late 1980s and even before then, obviously, but the playing in that league was, it was nothing short of, like, you would almost say bedlam every single night of the week. You play 3 games in 3 nights, and you hear about the fighters back then. They're charting, they're looking, going, okay, I got to fight this guy this night. I got to fight this guy next night. It was a completely different game than it is now. And it was pretty wild to play in the Western Hockey League back then. Line brawls were, you'd have one or two every single game, where now you're lucky if there's a fight every couple games. Back then, there were line brawls almost every single game. So it was pretty wild to play back then, especially a guy like me. Like I was 5'9" and 165 pounds when I played. So I was pretty fortunate enough. The big guys kind of left me alone because they kind of stick to they don't go out of their weight class a lot. Sometimes they would in a sticky situation, but for the most part, I survived it anyways. There's two really interesting games. If you get on YouTube and you type in Tri-City Americans, Regina Pats, there's a game in 1988 and there's another game in 1999. The full games are on YouTube, and there were like 4 or 5 full-on line brawls in these games. I watched them last week. A guy sent them to me. It's pretty wild to play back then. Olaf Kolzig was in that game. Stu Barnes, who went on to play in the NHL. A lot of future NHLers.
Wow,
pretty interesting to watch.
Yeah, Olaf Kolzig. Yeah, I remember when he was with the Capitals, when they had was it that brown and blue jerseys and stuff like that, and how he was just a force for the Capitals back then.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. Yeah.
So you're fine. Playing in the Western Hockey League and the ECHL at that point in time, how different do you see the game now, even at the NHL level, but at the Western Hockey League level, the ECHL, the AHL, how different do you see the game now compared to the way it was, in the late 80s, early 90s? Well,
there's two big differences in my opinion. First and foremost, the players now are so far above and beyond the talent level that we had back then. These kids are unbelievable. The game is so much quicker. It has to do with a lot of different things. Obviously, the physical training that goes into these young kids back then. Like back then when I played, we were discouraged for the most part from lifting weights and putting on muscle, because the theory was, and we were encouraged in the off season to play soccer because they wanted us to have strong legs, a strong core. But the theory is that if you lifted too many weights and you got too big and strong, you would lose your touch with the puck. You wouldn't be able to stick handle. So we were really kind of discouraged from really putting on size and getting big. And I'll tell you who the guy who changed all that was Rod Brindamore. Okay, so I remember I played in it was like a Canadian, not an Olympic team, but it was like a Canadian national team program when I was 15. I went to a summer camp where we were putting together it was like a selection camp to play. Team Russia was coming in. And Rod Brindamore, I actually played on his line. I was his right winger, which was pretty wild. But we were amazed at Rod Brindamore because he comes in the locker room and takes his shirt off to get undressed and get ready for practice. And he was an absolute monster. And we were all sitting looking at each other going, I don't think we're supposed to look like that, right? And so he was so big and strong, he just absolutely dominated everybody. So he goes on and plays a year, I think 1 or maybe 2 years of Tier 2 junior, okay, for the Notre Dame Hounds, which is a school in Saskatchewan where kids from all over the world go there. And the town literally has probably 50 people that live in it. And he goes to play, but the town like quadruples in sizes when school's in session. And it's mostly hockey players from all around the world. They go there. They have really phenomenal facilities. They learn to play the game. They practice every day. They go to school. They all live together in dorms. So he went there for a couple of years, played Tier 2 junior, got a college scholarship. I forget where he played, but he was so dominant when he got to college. He played, I think, just 1 season. And they were like, you got to go to the NHL. And when he got to the NHL, he got into the locker room and everyone was like, okay, what kind of steroids is this guy on? And he wasn't. He was natural. If you ever heard stories about him, when he played in Notre Dame, they won, I think it was called the Centennial Cup back then, which is the national championship. But they got home at like 3 o'clock in the morning. All he did was drink milk. And they got home at like 3 o'clock in the morning. So the legendary story goes, and the season's over. So everyone's going off and having a few cocktails and celebrating. They got back, and he went to the gym. He was in the gym working out. So Rod Brindamore changed the face of hockey as far as physical fitness goes. So he goes to play a year of college hockey, dominates, goes to the NHL, and everyone there was just and he was a young kid. He was probably 19. They were totally mesmerized by him and his physical fitness, and everybody else followed suit after that.
That's crazy.
That's wild. Yeah, because I'm a Blackhawks fan, but me and my family lived in North Carolina when we were there when the Hurricanes moved down from Hartford and stuff like that. And we actually were at Game 7 of them winning the Stanley Cup in 2006. We were like in the very last row of the stadium. So like they're my second team, but they're my dad's team because we had season tickets and stuff like that. And Rod Brindamore was my favorite player for the Hurricanes. I mean, I have his shirt, hat, jersey, whatever, like, because he's my guy. Yeah. And I was so happy to watch that live, to see them win it, especially with him as the captain. Yeah. You know, he saw him do the stomp on like he's doing the high knee leg kicks, just lifting the cuff up. And you see him now, he could still play in this league. That's how legit he is. And the fact that they have to like lock him out of the gym at the arena, be like, dude, you gotta stop.
I was watching some highlights the other night on TV, and they showed him on the bench, and he had his mask on, and I didn't know who it was right away, and I saw this huge vein just popping out of his neck. I said, "Oh, that's Rod Brindamore."
Yeah, it's crazy to think that, you know, you sit there and look at him, and he's probably in his mid 40s, late 40s.
He's my age, so he's 50.
Yeah, and he still looks in amazing shape. It's insane. He is so jacked, and it's crazy to see him still in comparison with some of these other guys. You know, seeing him in comparison to Andrei Svechnikov and, you know, Jordan Staal and Sebastian Aho, and, you know, even though he's a little smaller, but still, it's
like Jacob Slavin. He literally could jump over the boards and just go fight someone now, and he would probably still win the fight.
But
you don't want to mess with him.
No, it's really awesome to see, you know, what he's done for the league in terms of that, but also what he's done in Carolina. He's a fantastic coach. You know, he's been able to really get them turned around, and they are a serious contender every year.
Yeah.
Well, he's the kind of coach where when he says, this is how we used to do it, I hope the young guys are listening to him, because how he did it was right. And he was like a Tiger Woods in golf. Tiger Woods changed the game forever with really stepping into being a power guy, and the way Bryson DeChambeau's doing it now. That's the way Rod Brindamore was with hockey. So I hope the young guys really listen to him, because like I doubt the guy's ever had a drop of alcohol in his body in his life, right?
Yeah,
and
I doubt it.
I remember we were scrimmaging, and during the scrimmage at this camp, he was on the other team. And I took a run at him, and I said, I'm going to try and knock him down. And literally, I flung my head around. It was cold in the rink. And they always say, you know, when you get hit really hard, if snot flies across your cheek, it was right across my cheek. He didn't even know I tried to hit him. And I just totally wiped out. But he's pretty amazing guy. One other story about that, it was pretty funny. We got on the bus after scrimmage, and it was in the summer, so even in Saskatchewan, sometimes it gets a little warm there. And so he got on the bus. All the players are on there. He gets on with no shirt on. And everyone on the team was like, oh, God. And they started booing him. Boo, yes, get off the bus, put your shirt on. He's a pretty amazing guy. It's cool to see what he's doing now, too.
Yeah, it's really awesome knowing, you know, a little bit about his backstory and stuff. It's, you know, even as a Blue Jackets fan, but I don't know many teams that would not want him as a coach or even just as a presence around their team.
Yeah.
Or even a player still. Like, you're like, can we get this guy for like a half a season just to give us a little bit of a boost?
Yeah.
Like, why not? So going back to the WHL and the ECHL, like, was there a certain city that you just like, you kind of circled on your schedule? Like, I can't wait to go here, you know, for like on a road trip and like, you know, be able to go and like, I don't know if you had days off and stuff like that, but like go and just hang out in the city and do stuff. Like, is there a certain city that you just loved going to?
We like going to Nashville a lot because it was one of the bigger cities in the area. And, you know, all the country bars and stuff downtown. We always seemed to get a day off there. But my second last year was the first year of the South Carolina Stingrays. Okay. And they were really pretty far away from all of the other teams in the league. So when you went and played Carolina or South Carolina, you usually went and played 2 games. So we would usually have a game, a day off, and then possibly another day off, and then a game. So a lot of times, it's middle of January and you're down in South Carolina. And, the first time I ever saw a palm tree, I got off the bus at like 3:00 in the morning after a game, and we were playing South Carolina. And I was like, oh my gosh, a palm tree. This is amazing. So we loved going to South Carolina, typically because we had a couple days off. We did not like going to Hampton Roads because we were not allowed to leave the hotel after dark, because where the Scope Arena was kind of, and our hotel wasn't too far away. It wasn't a very good neighborhood. So we weren't allowed to go anywhere after dark rolled in. You guys, you're in the hotel and you're not allowed to head out. But Nashville was always fun. Johnstown was pretty cool. It was close enough that we never had any overnight trips to Johnstown.
Right.
But for anybody that is a fan of the movie Slapshot, that the Johnstown Chiefs in real life were portrayed as the Charlestown Chiefs in the movie. So that movie was filmed in Johnstown. So when you see him in the, remember Dickie Dunn, the radio guy up in the booth, the peanut vendors are standing up to him. That's all filmed in Johnstown. And that arena is just, I believe they're still playing in it. And
oh, wow.
They probably haven't touched it in 40 years. It's one of the great old barns of hockey.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I actually live in South Carolina. I'm about maybe an hour and a half from the Stingrays, and about not probably that far either from the Greenville Swamp Rabbits and stuff like that. Yeah, so I've been to the Stingrays games a couple of times. It's an interesting area for sure, but
yeah,
that's wild. That for even back then, like the Stingrays were like that's somewhat new, and just that's like the farthest team. And now you got teams in like Jacksonville, and you got they got the Everglades and stuff like that. So yeah. It's way different compared to what the ECHL is now. But
yeah. And a lot of it, I wouldn't be sitting here really right now if Wayne Gretzky was not born. You think about that, right? Like when Wayne Gretzky got traded to the LA Kings, that was huge for hockey because it really kind of put hockey on the map in non-traditional markets. Here's the greatest hockey player of all time, married to a movie star, Janet Jones. Hockey became very popular. It started spreading in non-traditional markets. There were hockey teams in Birmingham, Alabama, in the old WHA way back, but really, not as popular. So Gretzky popularized the game of hockey and opened up the South to teams coming in like Tallahassee. And you mentioned the Florida Everblades. And so, if it wasn't for Wayne Gretzky, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. I probably wouldn't have the life I have right now. So one day I'll get to thank him.
Yeah, right. So I know we had the Seattle Kraken coming in and stuff like that. And of course, that's could probably be an instant rivalry with Vancouver and stuff like that, how close they're going to be. Is there any other particular city that you could probably, if the NHL does expand more past the 32 teams that we're going to have soon, if they even do, what other cities would you even think that might be a good location for a potential expansion team? Like maybe like a Houston or, is there anywhere in particular that you can think of that would be a good place for
you're probably going to think I'm
team?
Crazy. So you automatically think about big markets, right? Mm-hmm. And you think of Houston and, you think of huge cities that can support a team. I would really like to see the NHL try and put an NHL team in either Saskatoon or Regina, Saskatchewan. And I'll tell you why. Now, the population of the entire province is, I think it's somewhere around 1 million people. Right. Regina is about 300,000. Saskatoon is about the same size. However, when you look at the NHL, if you're a youngster and you want to be born in a specific place where you're automatically going to have an edge on being born anywhere else in the world, you want to be born in Saskatchewan. Per capita, there's more NHLers from Saskatchewan, specifically Regina, than anywhere in the entire world. So you look and you go, the population, every game would be sold out. People would drive 4 hours from all over the province to go to every single game. It might be tough to get players to want to go there because not a great nightlife like New York City or Los Angeles, something like that. But if you want to set a team somewhere where you can really showcase Canadian fans and support for the game, I would absolutely be so thrilled to see a team end up in Saskatchewan somehow. They could build a 17, 18,000 seat arena. It'll be packed every single game. Doesn't matter who they're playing. It could be minus 40 outside, or it could be springtime playoff hockey. is going to be packed.
Yeah.
That would be phenomenal.
That would be fantastic because, like, right now we're already at an odd even of teams in Canada. Like, that'd be great to have an even number of teams up there in Saskatchewan. I mean, you have the Saskatoon Blades, who are always a really good team already as it is, and you got the Regina, like you said, the Regina Pats. Like, I don't know how you like those teams are always fun to watch. And me and Alex we're getting more into the CHL ourselves, and we got teams in all three leagues and stuff like that. Like, I think that'd be fantastic. Honestly, I didn't even think about Saskatchewan as a possible place. Like, why not? Even if you're a professional hockey player, if you're in a city that is all in on hockey, I don't know how you would not love living there, because the fact that that'd be a great place to play, because you're going to be in a town that eats and breathes hockey. Like, I don't know how you would not want to be around that.
It's going to be inexpensive for them, for the most part, to live in a place like that too. And Saskatchewan's in an odd place because it's rabid with hockey fans. And you've got the Winnipeg Jets, you've got the Calgary Flame in Manitoba to the east, you got the Flames in Edmonton to the west, then you got Vancouver, and Saskatchewan's just kind of sitting there with nothing. It's farmland, prairies. The farmers, they don't have anything else to do in the winter unless you're a cattle farmer. They got nothing else to do but go and watch hockey. So it would be just phenomenal for the game and for Canada and Saskatchewan, obviously.
Yeah,
for sure. No,
you see, especially down in the States, once you look at it a little bit more, you see how important hockey is to normal life in Canada, because they don't have a lot of other stuff. You have the CFL minus what's going on now and some other sports, but hockey is such it's a life thing in Canada, and you're playing it all the time. So I think being able to have that would be really awesome, especially for, a remote area that doesn't really have much.
Yeah.
Like you said, it might not be as appealing for the players, but it would be one thing that if you want to showcase a very good fan base, throw them there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, it's such a unique place. Like, people don't understand in the States, especially where I live, because I'm in North Florida, and people don't understand the popularity of hockey in Canada. And so the way I equate it for them so that they understand, I tell them, imagine living in the South and there is no such thing as baseball. There's no such thing as basketball, and there's no such thing as NASCAR. All you are left with is NCAA college football. And you know how big that is now. Well, that's how big it is in Canada. It's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah. You look at, you can kind of equate it to some other places. For example, I live in Columbus, Ohio, and, we have the Blue Jackets, but they're not as popular because, they're not very successful. And we all know that. But here in Columbus, it's all about Ohio State. Yeah. That's what everybody talks about. Everybody knows, and everybody wants to go and, talk about the Buckeyes and how they are good at football. But it's, I think that would be a huge market from a fan perspective to be able to throw them up in Regina or anywhere else up in Saskatchewan. That would be a fantastic place from a marketing standpoint, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So the Columbus Chill back in the day, they used to be there. One of the greatest things. So we used to love it playing, we're hockey players and you're supposed to be focused. And, when these guys say, oh, we don't notice the fans and we don't hear what they're saying. And that's total baloney. We hear everything. Sometimes we don't acknowledge, because once you let a fan know that you've heard them say something, all it's going to do is encourage them to just keep going and getting worse. But one of the fun things about Columbus Chill back in the day is that whoever did this marketing was a genius, because I still remember it today as a fond memory of playing in the East Coast League. They had some sort of pizza, a local pizzeria had some sort of promotion, and they had, the staff of the team, they had this music playing. They'd say, it's, Johnny's pizza time. And they would run around and they would fling pizza boxes into the crowd like Frisbees. And we'd be sitting on the bench, kind of sitting there, and we'd hear the music. We looking down the bench. Hey, it's pizza time. It's pizza time. Yeah. We're in the middle of the game and we're watching all the pizza boxes fly around up in the crowd. So
yeah,
the other thing I liked about Columbus too was that the boards, they were like a trampoline and they were very loud. So you could hit a guy and you'd never get hurt hitting in the boards, because you get hit and the boards would flex all the way down and fling you back, and they were super loud. So you'd run at a guy and you missed him. Nobody really cared because it made such a loud noise. Everyone would still go crazy. Mm-hmm. It was a pretty wild place to play in those games back in the day.
Yeah. Ironically enough, with the pizza, the Blue Jackets do that.
So they?
They've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
So they had a big contract with Papa John's Pizza for a while, and it'd be pizza time. So there's red lights going everywhere, loud siren. They'd have everyone just chucking pizzas. So our mascot would come out. We got a new deal. So I haven't been to a normal game yet, because they just got it before the season. And I'm curious to see if the new sponsor is going to be throwing them out, which, I mean, they have to.
Yeah, you have to.
As far back as I can remember about going to Blue Jackets games, they've always been throwing the pizza out. So they must have had the marketing genius to be like, hey, people love this at the chill games. Let's do it here with the Blue Jackets as well.
Yeah. So another funny story is that we were playing the Louisville Ice Hawks. It was like a Tuesday night random game in the middle of the season. And so we come to the bench, and right before the national anthem, and we get on the bench, and I forget where I'm sitting beside someone. He elbows me. He goes, check out Hank Williams Jr. I go, what? He goes, points like that. And I turn around. Hank Williams Jr., there's like probably 500 people at the game, but Hank Williams Jr. was sitting right behind the bench. He had on a black silk jacket, said Hank Jr. on it, and he was just sitting there, had his beard and hat, and just sitting there drinking a beer, just sitting right behind the bench, just enjoying the hockey game. He sat there the whole game. We turned around like that, and he gave us a little wave. Hey, how you guys doing?
Wow. That's awesome.
That's
wild. Pretty cool.
That's wild.
Yeah, that's really cool. So once you were done playing hockey, you moved on to being a broadcaster. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your time as being a broadcaster, what that was like, some of the different experiences you had while you were broadcasting some of the games?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think maybe if God didn't intend me to be a hockey player, he probably intended me to made me to be a color analyst for the games, because I really enjoyed it. And the first couple of years in Wheeling, I suffered some injuries, and so I was on the payroll. And the GM comes to me. He's like, "Listen, can you?" Because back then, you didn't have a color guy. All you had was the main play-by-play guy. And so he said, "Why don't you go jump up in the booth?" And it was the first year was a guy named Joel Stern. The second year, we hired a guy named Dave Gosher. So Dave Gosher, his first professional job was with us back then. And so he went on to be the play-by-play guy for the Buffalo or Boston Bruins TV for a long time. And I think he's with Vegas maybe now, somebody like that. But so I did that, and I really liked it a lot because, as you can tell, I like to talk. And I had a unique insight to the game. And I used to like explaining the game to the fans, because I knew a lot of them were probably unfamiliar with the rules. So that's pretty basic. You kind of go through and say, that's why this whistle blew. But what I really enjoyed doing was talking about the real inside, what's going on in the ice. And I could see it because I knew what was going on. Like I remember one time, a goalie had not let in a goal, and the whistle went, and it was right near the net, and one of the players just nonchalantly after the whistle flipped the puck into the goal when the goalie, he turned around and was scraping his crease or whatever, and he flipped the puck into the goal after the whistle. And that is a major no-no. And I remember there was a line brawl, and all Bedlam just went crazy. And so the fun part, me knowing what that meant on the ice to those guys, that was like an insult, and that was like a big no-no, an inside rule that you don't do in the game. So I enjoyed very much talking about the inside things that were going on in the game and explaining it. And I used to have a lot of fun with it, especially when I did the games in Tallahassee, because my broadcast partner was a guy named Kyle Schultz. He actually passed away about 10 years ago now. He went on, he was the voice of the Milwaukee Admirals and Salt Lake City for a couple years, and was just a tremendous guy. And he was one of my closest friends. So can you imagine getting paid to sit in a radio booth with an absolute crazy crowd around you. You know, we're the home of the Florida State Seminoles. So you go to a game and there's 5,000 college kids from FSU there. And so could you imagine having the ability to sit with one of your closest friends and discuss hockey and watch hockey, especially in the East Coast back then, because you never knew what was going to happen. So I really enjoyed that part of it, probably more than the playing part. I think if I was to go back and knowing what I know now, if they said, okay, you can play or you can become a broadcaster and talk about it, I would probably take the broadcasting end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. There couldn't be a better feeling than being able to sit there with one of your best friends, just talking about hockey, you know, a sport that you love to just watch and learn about. And you used to play and things like that. So Cory, before we let you go, we do have one question. Yeah. And we'd like to ask you about your very in-depth and extensive movie history that we have. So you told us that you were a part of a pretty famous movie back in the mid-90s, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, this is a great story. So the movie's called Sudden Death. I think you got Jean-Claude up there right now. So
Yes,
this
sir.
is what happened with this movie. It was pretty wild. So the guy that owned the Pittsburgh Penguins at the time, his name was Howard Baldwin. He was also a Hollywood movie producer. Like, he produced the Ray Charles movie. He produced Sahara with Matthew McConaughey. There was a couple other good ones that he had done. And I think he did those after. But anyways, he was the producer of this Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. So that was the year the NHL went on strike. So earlier in the fall, when they started training camp, and the premise of the movie is terrorists kidnap, I think it's the vice president of the United States. He's at the Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals between the Chicago Blackhawks and the Pittsburgh Penguins. And so Jean-Claude, obviously being a local fireman, he's going to save the vice president of the United States, right? So the entire movie is filmed pretty much around this hockey game. So early in the fall, when the NHL was still in camp, they shipped in the Chicago Blackhawks uniforms, and they had a big scrimmage session with all the Penguins players who were at camp. Well, the hockey scenes weren't very realistic. You know, you got a bunch of NHL guys. They're worried about trying to make a hockey team. They've been practicing, going through training camp. They've probably been in a bunch of scraps in camp and stuff already. So they felt like the hockey scenes were not very realistic. So what they did was, I was playing in Wheeling, which is about an hour drive from Pittsburgh. The Johnstown Chiefs were about an hour away on the other side of Pittsburgh. So Howard Baldwin called the general managers from both teams and said, hey, we'll pay your players to split amongst the whole team $5,000. You guys come up. One of you will be the Penguins. One of you will be the Blackhawks. Play a game. We'll film it with all our film crews, and we're going to use all the hockey scenes for this movie. So our coach is like, okay, so we're the players, we're doing the math. We're like, you know, like, that's probably like $300 a guy. I mean, that's like a week's salary. Of course, we're all for this. Right. Here's where it gets interesting, is that we go to the arena, and so they had filmed the hockey scenes earlier. They didn't like them. So this was right after Christmas, I believe. The NHL strike had ended. So they got on all the local media in Pittsburgh and the radio and TV, and they told all the people of Pittsburgh, they said, listen, the NHL strike is over. Come on out back to the Igloo. It was the Igloo back then. You can watch the Pittsburgh Penguins have training camp. They'll have a couple sessions. They promoted like $1 beer, $1 hot dog type thing. And then after the Penguins are done, we're going to film the scenes, the hockey scenes for this movie, and you might be in this movie. So sure enough, there was like 15,000 people showed up. And so we get to the arena, and so there were some empty seats. This was pretty cool too. There's some empty seats down around the glass, and they didn't want to have empty seats because you're at Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. So they stuck cardboard cutouts of people in these seats. But the funny thing is that we would be skating around and we'd be looking on the glass, and there was a cardboard cutout of like Darth Vader and Marilyn Monroe and, you know, some goofy things, pretty funny. So we go up to the igloo, and the producer is standing there, and he has a blank check for $5,000. And he got with both of our coaches. He said, winner gets this $5,000.
Oh,
so, yeah. So for us, I mean, now we're sitting there going, whoa, man, now we're getting 2 weeks salary for one game. So we were a very good team at the time. We were affiliated with Montreal Canadiens and Edmonton Oilers, who were both kind of like known in the hockey world, kind of like the New York Yankees for developing their minor league system. We had a phenomenal team. We were in first place at the time, and we're all sitting there going, oh yes, we just made an easy $5,000. What happened was the coaches got together and said, we are not playing for this money, because we were supposed to play them a couple days later in the regular season. And our coaches determined that if you had a bunch of East Coast Hockey League guys from the mid 90s playing for $5,000, there wouldn't be anybody left to play 2 days later. So we ended up just splitting the money. But here's another cool part of it is that we were the Chicago Blackhawks. So, Zach, I know you're a Blackhawk guy. In the real game that we played, we demolished them. Okay.
Nice.
In the movie, we lost. So the real cool part for me is that we get there, and the movie people are shuttling everybody around, and they take us into the locker room, and they check in, they go, what's your name? I said, I'm Cory Paterson. They said, okay. They took me over to my stall. They said, you'll be wearing this tonight. I said, okay. And I pulled it up, and I was number 33, Dirk Graham. Dirk Graham grew up in the next neighborhood over from me in Regina, Saskatchewan.
Wow.
It was pretty cool.
What a small world.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I was so thrilled to get that jersey because he was a Pats alumni too. Yeah, right. And I remember as a little kid watching him take a slap shot, and it broke the glass in the Agrodome. And so we ended up playing the game, packed arena. Now, there's a couple scenes in the movie that are staged. They did a pretty good job for the most part. But when they filmed the bench scenes where the coach is yelling at them and stuff, all of those guys that are on the bench that you can really see the close-ups of their faces, those were a bunch of local roller hockey guys from Pittsburgh that could play ice hockey as well. So, like, if you remember, I think it's Luc Robitaille comes down and he scores the game-tying goal, I think, with less than a second left. He has a breakaway. Yeah. Well, 33 is chasing him. That's not me. That's an actor. So the realistic hockey scenes that you can tell, I'm 33. There's a couple scenes where you could tell it's like movie magic. Yeah, right. That's not me. But yeah, it was pretty wild. I mean, we felt like absolute NHLers for one night.
No, that is absolutely fantastic. Because I've seen, cause I remember when I first watched that, I forget when it was, but I thought I thought it was actually a good movie. And I actually had that as my, Alex, what do I have that 7 or 8 on my list as hockey movies or something like that?
I thought you had it as like number 3.
Or that too. I had it pretty high on my list, but I always thought it was interesting because the fact, like, you had Jean-Claude Van Damme fighting Iceberg in the cafeteria, which was fantastic. And then he's on the ice
as a goalie.
As the goalie, and he just fights someone, which was just like, okay, and it was just wild. And of course, you had the helicopter falling into the scoreboard and just everything else. So
in the fight scene, I think he got in a fight. He was wearing his goalie equipment and does a Jean-Claude Van Damme kick with. It's like if you've ever had goalie pads on, you know Jean-Claude's not kicking some guy in the head with goalie pads on. But
no, that's
it was quite an experience. I mean, one of the most memorable days of my entire life. Is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. But just to be able to do that, and the fact that your coach is like, we're not letting this happen. But I figured you'd get a kick out of knowing the Blackhawks. We won the game, the real game, like 7-2 or something like that. We blew them out. Hey, you know that? I guess they'll make up for the what I think was like the 91 or 92 Cup where they lost to the Penguins. So hey, you know what? I'll take it.
Yeah, that's right. You'll take it. Yeah,
I'll take it. But no, I appreciate that. You know that's really awesome.
I have one great hit in this movie, and so like I was a small guy, but I was like a physical player. That's why I got injured all the time because I was always running at guys and outside of my division. I shouldn't have done things like that. Right. I have a really great hit right along the glass, and I remember when it happened. I was sitting there thinking, oh gosh, I hope they use that in the movie. I hope they use that in the movie. So every couple of years I pull out the DVD. I've got twin sons that are 19 and I'll be like, come here guys, it's time again. There I am. Like, they call me Uncle Rico. Uncle Rico.
I bet you I can hit that guy through the boards all over the mountains.
Yeah.
Now, with that movie, do you still have any souvenirs from it? Did you get to keep that jersey or anything like that?
No, nothing. Just the check. We got the check. And the funny part was that our general manager at the time, he came in and he gave us all of our checks and he started complaining, just griping at us in the locker room because he had to pay for the bus to drive us up to Pittsburgh for the game and he didn't get paid anything. So he lost money and we all made money. It was like, hey, listen, you're paying us peanuts anyway, so get over it.
That's what general managers are for.
Yeah, right. It's funny. It's like, oh, even though you're making so much money and you guys are making like $300 a week and that.
Yeah.
I still, even now, like the paychecks for like the minor league guys are still kind of a joke as it is for the for the East Coast League and the AHL and all that stuff. And so
but whatever. Good though. Like we didn't have to pay. They gave us apartments and so we didn't have to pay for utilities, apartments. So that, it's just like walking around money. Right. And what you tried to do was bank as much as you could. And I figured out something else too when I first got there, is that there are a lot of community events that you can do as a minor league team. Local businesses will pay for players to come out, like Subway. I remember going to Subway, the grand opening for a Subway, and you go out and they'll advertise, hey, so-and-so from the team will be here from 3 to 4. Come on out, meet them, get an autograph or whatever. And so what I did was, this was pretty unique. And anybody that's out there that is going to join a minor league team or you're going to go do something, I highly suggest when you first get there, go and find your community relations director, okay? And do this. This is what I did. And I almost doubled my income from playing, doing community events. So I went to him and I said, listen, I know you're going to have community events. And I know a lot of them are going to be for charities and stuff like that where you don't get paid to do them. I said, call me. I will do all of them. I said, with one caveat, when you get something that is a paid event, you give me the first opportunity to do it. So 2 things happened. So I became very popular in Wheeling because I knew everybody, because I was at every single community event there. I made a lot more money because I was getting paid to do events for grand openings and all that kind of stuff. And the best part for me is that I became a member of the community. Like the fans, they were like my friends, right? And I used to get hassled all the time from my teammates. They were like, because, I was a marginal player. I had a specific role. I killed penalties and I was an agitator, that kind of thing. But I certainly didn't put up big numbers. So, but when you announce the starting lineup and they'd say starting in right wing, number 10, Cory Paterson, the place would go nuts. And my teammates are like, why? And I'm like, because they're my friends. I hang out with these people. I know them all. Right. And so you become part of the community. People want to come to the games because they feel like they know you. And hopefully if you're doing things right, you do know them. So anybody, I got a friend of mine who he's actually just made the St. Louis Cardinals roster. His name's John Nagowski. He's really the talk of spring training. He's from Tallahassee. And when he started in the minor leagues a couple of years ago, I'm friends with his dad. And I told him that. I said, you go tell John, wherever he ends up, go find the community relations guy. He'll make money. He'll become part of the community. He'll get to know a lot of people. So I highly recommend anybody in the college players too, go find your community relations guy, get out there and talk to people and meet them. And the fans are the greatest thing in the world. They're just people. They spend their hard-earned money on watching you play, coming to your games, make them feel appreciated.
No, for sure. So before we wrap up and all that stuff, so you said there was a certain hockey player we had to watch in the CHL. Who is that guy that we need to keep an eye on? Because like I said, we're doing a lot more CHL stuff here coming soon throughout the leagues. Who do we need to keep an eye on?
Okay, this kid's name is Connor Bedard. Okay. He's the first ever 15-year-old in the Western Hockey League to receive exceptional player status. Oh, wow. Which means as a 15-year-old, 15-year-olds are allowed to play. I don't know exactly what this status means, but it is a huge deal. Like Connor McDavid was a 15-year-old that received exceptional player status, and John Tavares. Okay, so that tells you the caliber of this kid.
Jeez.
He is averaging. He's playing for the Regina Pats. They have a hub going on right now. They call it the double for the WHL. Is nicknamed the Dub, so they call this the double, the Hubble or the hub.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah.
This kid, I'm telling you, I've watched him play a couple times. He's 15 years old. He's leading the WHL in scoring. At least he was yesterday, going into yesterday. Every game he's played, he's at least 1 point. One game he had 4 points. His first game, he scored 2 goals in 47 seconds.
Jeez.
I'm not kidding you when I tell you that his wrist shot, snapshot is probably harder than players from my era are slap shots. A lot of it has to do with obviously the equipment and the composite sticks and everything they're doing now, but the training. If you want to watch a kid, and so that when he's in the NHL, you can go, man, I remember watching him at 15. Go track down the Regina Pats. Look them up on Twitter. There's a couple apps that you can get. There's a CHL app where you can watch all of their games live stream.
Yeah.
Check this kid out. When I tell you, he lives up. He way beyond. He's hyped up more than any player I've ever seen, and he's not getting enough hype. He's unbelievable.
Yeah. We're definitely going to have to make sure to give him a lot more hype on our podcast for sure. Cause like I said, we're doing a lot of CHL stuff, and I'm definitely going to be watching more games because like I said, me and Alex have teams in each league that we follow. Like I got the Winterhawks, the 67s, and the Huskies out of the QMJHL. I know Alex is London Knights. Do you have any other ones, Alex, out of the Dub and the QM, or is it just London for right now?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, I've been following the London Knights a lot for a couple years, but I think the big team out of North America that I've been following is Avangard over in the KHL, because I know there's a lot of guys that are going
to get into watching more of this.
Yeah.
Check out the Regina Pats and the Moose Jaw Warriors, because the Moose Jaw Warriors have their own 15-year-old. I cannot remember his name right now, but he's not far behind Connor. And that rivalry is the biggest rivalry in the entire CHL.
Wow.
Moose Jaw Warriors, Regina Pats. You want to have some fun over the next 3 years? Check those two teams out. Now, Bedard, he was just named to a Canadian national under 18U team that is playing in some big tournament in Texas in a couple weeks. He only has about 4 or 5 more games with the Pats, and then he has to leave in a couple weeks. So that'll be the end of it, seeing him with the Pats this year. Right. But come next year, every nickel that you would pay for any kind of live streaming service to watch him for the next 2 years, it's going to be worth it. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, we see the Regina Pats quite a bit. One of the guys that's actually pretty active with all of us with Belly Up Sports is Rod Peterson from the Rod Peterson
Rod's
Show.
A friend of mine,
and he is one of the broadcasters for the Regina Pats.
That's exactly right.
It's actually really cool. Everything's just kind of becoming even a smaller world. We meet you, and then hey, you're friends with Rod, who's one of the announcers for the Regina Pats, and he's super active on Twitter too, and it's really cool being able to see that for sure.
We're definitely. I'm definitely going to get one of those streaming services, and I'll make sure to check out some Regina and Moose Jaw games for sure, because we love hockey here, and the fact that we're tapping into the CHL, which I believe is kind of really underrated in terms of people outside of Canada. It's not really watched a lot. So for the fact that me and Alex are kind of jumping into this, we'll definitely have to hit you up more often for sure to be like, hey, who do we need to watch? What rivalries are coming up and stuff like that. Of course, when you have time to do that with us.
Anytime, guys. I love it. I love talking hockey, especially old Western Hockey League stuff. So like you think about this, right? So Stu Grimson's an alumni of the Regina Pats.
Yes, sir.
And Clark Gillies is a Moose Jaw kid. And so you think about all these names now. Wouldn't you love to have gone back to seeing them play way back when and seeing the careers? So you're going to see a lot of kids who are really on a fast track to play in the NHL play in the CHL. So the guys that you see at 17, 18, you're going to see them in a couple years in the NHL.
Yeah, that's why we're really excited about jumping onto the CHL and stuff like that, because now we can be like 4 years from going, hey, we remember this kid playing for the Tri-City Americans, or the Blades, or talking teams like the Guelph and stuff like that, just all these other teams. So we're really excited for that. But so you have a podcast that's going to join us here at Belly Up Sports really soon, called the Hockey Club. Can you explain to us, and for those as well, what are we going to be expecting from your podcast when you start dropping episodes over here at Belly Up Sports?
Yeah. So my idea with the podcast is that, I listened to the show you guys put out yesterday, and Alex, you were going through the Columbus Blue Jackets. I was sitting there going, how in the world does he know all this stuff? And so I'm not as in tune with what's going on with the NHL right now, as far as I know who the stars are, but I don't know who the third line left winger is from the Penguins and, that kind of stuff. So the way you guys do, and so your type of content is not what is going to be on my podcast. My idea is, so I've kind of been reaching out and getting in touch with a bunch of old teammates for the last couple months, just talking to them, FaceTiming them, Microsoft Teams. I'm sitting in my office and, man, we're just telling the most unbelievable stories. Do you remember? And so I thought, man, this would be pretty good for people to listen to. I think some people would enjoy it. So my goal is that when I put out a podcast, that if you listen to it tomorrow or you listen to it for a year from now, it's going to have the same impact. It's not going to be dated. It's not going to be, just think if you'd have been talking about Patrick Laine with the Jets, 2 months ago, and someone tunes in to listen to it and they go, oh, well, Laine's not with the Jets anymore. So my goal is to put out a podcast where we discuss, we're going to talk about current NHL stuff and hockey and stuff like that in general, but we're going to go back. And I've got some really great guests lined up. Coming out of the chute, I've got a guy named Jim Mill, right? So I'm sitting there going, okay, I got a bunch of old teammates that went on to play in the NHL. 2 of them are general managers. There's a bunch of coaches. And so I'm sitting there going, do I want to get a player? Do I want to get someone as a coach? Do I want to get someone who worked for a team in the administration side or hockey operations? And I got to thinking, I said, well, I know a guy. His name's Jim Mill. He did all of those things. He was a player. He worked in the East Coast Hockey League. He worked for the East Coast team. Then he was in hockey operations for the East Coast Hockey League. He was hockey operations in the American Hockey League, the National Hockey League. He was the assistant GM of the Minnesota Wild and was the GM of their minor league team. I think maybe they were in Houston. So here's a guy, and now he's the director of pro scouting for the New Jersey Devils.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, I'm going to start this thing off and I'm going to get someone who just covers everything. So we're going to discuss old stories. Remember this, remember when, and we're going to have a great time. The second guy that's going to be the second one I'm going to release is a guy named Kevin Haller. Played in the NHL for a long time, won a Stanley Cup with the Montreal Canadiens in 1993. And so we're going to get his perspective on the game today. What was it like playing in Montreal? And so a whole bunch of guests. And the best part of it is that every one of my guests, can you imagine in their cell phone the contacts that these guys all have, right?
Oh,
know, the old 6 degrees of separation of Kevin Bacon with hockey. I'm 1 degree away from Wayne Gretzky. I played with Danielle Berthiaume, who was the goalie for the LA Kings when Gretzky was there. Wow. So I'm going to be able to track down some really great guests, and I'll be able to help you guys too. If you guys ever need something, I'd be happy to help. But and a lot of my teammates are like me. They just love talking about the old times and what it was like. And so I thought, why not record it? Why not put it out for people to enjoy? I think a lot of people get a kick out of it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Everything, it's going to be PG. It's just like we're on a radio. We're not going to be dropping F-bombs. We're not going to be telling stories. So it might minimize us and some of the stuff we can tell, but we're going to put out a clean podcast. And maybe there's some young kids out there that can learn too, because we've been through it. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's some kids out there that are going to, want to go on and become professional hockey players at some level that maybe could get something out of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Yeah, because I'm a big history buff myself, and especially in sports and hockey, because I'm a big, a proponent of just learning about the league way but even before my time. So I think stories like that would be so good for people to know, like, hey, these are guys you probably even don't remember or you have heard of, but now you actually get to listen to them talk about the old style of hockey and stuff like that, and just be able to learn about teams that don't even exist anymore, or teams that rebranded or moved. Like we have the North Stars, or you're talking like the Kansas City Scouts, the Oakland, team, the Seals and stuff like that. So I'm definitely looking forward to, listening to your podcast once that starts dropping for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I'm super pumped to be with the Belly Up crew. When I announced everything, and I don't know what's going on with my Twitter.
Yeah.
I launched my hockey club Twitter account, and 2 days later, I got suspended. I'm like, I was able to look, and I was like, I tweeted an announcement, and I don't know I don't know if they think I'm spam, if somebody tried hacking the account already, but I'm trying to get it back. I don't know what's going on, but it was super cool when I announced it. I got all these messages from guys like you that are part of the Belly Up crew from all different sport genres. So you guys got something pretty good going on here, and I'm pretty happy to be part of it.
Belly Up is definitely a great place to be, and just to be able to have a former player like you on, is just to be able to, like you said, have all the contacts, just to be able to do a show like this. It's gonna be fantastic. I know I'm really looking forward to it. Alex, do you got any other questions for our guests before we jump out of here and stuff like that for Cory?
No, not really. Like you said, I'm really looking forward to once you're getting your content out. We've been sitting here talking for almost an hour, and it feels like we've been talking for 10 minutes.
That's exactly it.
That's one of the things that you're looking forward to once you can get that content out, and you're just going to be able to listen to it. There's not going to be any rhyme or reason that you can sit there and listen to something now, and like you said, a year or two from now you can look at it, and it's really cool being able to learn stories. So that for example, the kind of maybe not the face of changing the game, but what you told us with Rod Brindamore, that's something really cool that a lot of people may not know, and just small stories like that are really cool and really entertaining to listen to.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I'm looking forward to it. So appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah. Sure. So where can people find you on Twitter? Like your personal, whenever, your podcast, when that's come back, where can people find you? I
guess for now, if you go to at Cory Paterson on Twitter, and it's CORY 1T in Paterson. So PATERSON. And then you can see my hockey club Twitter is on there, and it is suspended for some reason. I don't know why, but if you just go to, for now, Cory Paterson on Twitter, and everything will be pushed out from there.
All right. Awesome. Well, like I said, thank you so much for joining us tonight, just to be able to talk and stuff like that, recapping your movie history and then your playing careers overall. So big thank you for being able to jump on with us.
Anytime. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, when we end up posting this, we are also going to tag Cory in this. So feel free to follow him, hit him up on Twitter. You can always find Zach at CLE Zach. You can find me at _CBJ. And here at Cannons and Tomahawks, it's always about
beer, food, and hockey.
Thank you for listening to the Cannons and Tomahawks podcast, presented by Belly Up Sports. Beer, food, and hockey.